Hello and welcome to another reading video. This weekend I am finally reading a highly anticipated read that I have been putting off for a very long time, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. All I know about this book is that it is mysterious and magical and follows a single character in an isolated setting. While the mystery and magic part are definitely intriguing to me, I am not always a fan of single POV and single setting stories, so I'm honestly curious to see how this one goes. Based on my reading of The Night Circus last year, I know that lyrical prose and vibes simply are not enough to carry a story for me. And part of why I've been putting this off is because I wanted to give myself the best possible chance of loving it. And I think that means having good chunks of time to really get immersed into the story. And one thing I've noticed is that I always love the books that I read while I'm traveling. That brings us to the second topic of today's video, which is that I will be traveling to Boston this weekend. I am catching an early train on Friday and getting there early afternoon, staying with a friend, and then getting a return train early Sunday afternoon, getting back Sunday night. Which means I will have about 8 hours of uninterrupted reading time on the train within the span of 3 days. And that truly sounds like a recipe for some great reading. So crossing my fingers, wish me luck. So we started off on a great foot in the morning. I got to Midtown and couldn't find my train ticket in my email because my search only pulled results from 2024. So I panic bought a bus ticket, only to realize a few minutes later that I did indeed have the train ticket all along. So with that minor hiccup and a 5-minute delay, I boarded my train and settled in. I started Piranesi with the physical and audiobook, and immediately I was pausing to take notes. This is also my book club pick for June, so I was messaging them to let them know how excited I was to discuss it. I can already see a lot of little details and word choices that I think would be interesting to discuss in detail. I arrived in Boston early in the afternoon and went to my friend's house to change, to regroup, and then we were headed back out. First, we made a quick lap through this gorgeous stationery shop. I was obsessed with their pen selection. And then went to a craft cocktail bar where the theme of the month was Star Wars. So every single item on the menu was Star Wars related, and I love how they decorated the space to match the theme, and they even had The Empire Strikes Back playing on the projector. These were honestly some of the most unique drinks I've ever seen. I ended up ordering one of the mocktails with raspberry and non-alcoholic gin. Our final stop of the night was dinner. We got some wood-fired pizza and salads to share, and I got another mocktail spritz. Again, this was a super unique and creative menu, and everything we had was truly amazing. That night I attempted to read before going to sleep. However, I only lasted about 10 minutes before passing out, but I got up early the next morning and had a fair amount of time. So this was the moment when I started to feel truly invested in this book. The author drip feeds you information, slowly giving you different pieces of the puzzle, and tells the story through a narrator who I was finding so endearing. I actually didn't want to put the book down, which is kind of rare for me. But this was my one full day in Boston, so we decided to spend the day going around to different thrift stores just outside the city, which included a few Salvation Armies, a couple Goodwills, and we ended at a Buffalo Exchange. I am actually on the hunt for a secondhand wedding dress, and it was fascinating the different styles that we were able to find. We stopped to refuel at a cafe where I ordered a sesame matcha latte, and then we were back on the grind. Some stores had more selection than others, and at each stop I of course had to check out the books. We then wrapped up the night with some Thai food. Ultimately, I did not find my dream wedding dress, but I did get a stronger sense of what I do and don't like wearing. I didn't get much reading done that night because I started going down a research rabbit hole on dress fabrics. But I did read a bit more in the morning and continued to get steadily more and more invested. For the final day, we went to a fast casual cafe where I got a breakfast burrito with Beyond sausage. And then we walked through an annual pop-up vintage market. There were so many booths and all of the vendors had such high quality and interesting pieces.
Did they fix that up for you yet? Well, record label and stuff, so. Oh man.
I could easily have spent hours there. They even had little tents that people could go into to try stuff on. I also had to get my latte fixed, so I ordered a maple oat milk latte here, and my friend ordered the pistachio chocolate latte, and then we swapped halfway through. Then it was time to get back on the train for another 4.5 hours. I was excited to read, but the lighting in my seat was really bad. I was able to change seats for the last hour of the trip and finally got some focused reading time in. I was almost sad to pull into Penn Station. Every time I picked up this book, it was getting harder and harder to put down. All right, and that brings us back to New York. That was such a fun and short, fast trip. I had such a good time. It was great to reconnect with my friend again. I also got some really fantastic reading done. I left the book on my desk, but I am just about over halfway through right now. The escalating tension and stakes and discoveries are so fascinating. I really am adoring the main character. I love seeing how he processes information and getting information through his viewpoint. He is a very analytical and reasonable narrator, which does make for a really satisfying perspective to read from. And overall, I would describe him as competent. I would love to keep the momentum going, so I am going to try to continue reading a good chunk of this tonight. I fear that if I were to let this book drag out too long, that I would lose some of the magic a little bit. So I do want to prioritize reading and finishing this as quickly as possible, but I also, while I'm reading, want to take my time and savor it. So it's that tug and pull of pacing while I'm reading that is just such a tricky balance sometimes, but I do want to carve out time and try to make space to get through it over the next couple of days. Before I do that, I did want to run through my quick thrift haul. While I was in Boston, I did manage to pick up no clothes, unfortunately. I was only looking for one thing that whole time, so I didn't get a chance to try on as many other things that I was coming across because I was so on a mission for the wedding dress. But I did take a peek at the DVD section in, I think it was one of the Goodwills we went to. No, it was a Savers. That was actually the most DVDs I've ever seen in one place. And I said to myself, if I see any of my all-time favorite movies, I wanted to get them on DVD because I miss having the director's commentary and the bonus features that come on a DVD set. I think that was such a fun era for movie watching, and I want to recapture that. I wanted to share the ones that I ended up picking up. So it's mostly comfort movies. I would say Van Helsing, directed by I actually don't know. Stephen Sommers, starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. This is definitely a comfort movie. It used to always be on FX while I was having a sick day at home from school. I ended up watching it quite a number of times. Shrek 2 is also such a comfort movie. The soundtrack in this is so much fun, and all of the little nods to Disney fairy tales are so fun. I've watched this multiple times. I used to watch it at sleepovers with my best friend growing up. That was definitely a go-to movie for us. I did get all 3 Lord of the Rings movies because, as you know, I am working my way through the books and the movies. Again, I've watched them so many times. One of my maybe favorites is Big Fish by... This is Tim Burton, actually. I always forget that. And it stars Ewan McGregor. But this was one that had a really strong emotional impact on me growing up. And again, I've watched it several times. And last but not least, I got a signed insert copy of The Gladiator. So signed by Ridley Scott, the director. I probably watched this one the least. I think I've maybe watched it 3 times in my life. But again, it had a huge emotional impact on me growing up. And I think some really powerful storytelling. Now, do I have a way to play any of these on anything in my house? Not at the moment, but eventually over time I would love to. Maybe my next laptop will have a CD player, or maybe we'll get a DVD player for the apartment. But in the meantime, these are just going to be living in part of my library, essentially. But that is all. It is time to get back to reading. All right, I'm back and I have so many more thoughts. Frankly, I am still marinating on this, and I think I will be for some time. So I'm just going to share where my thoughts are at as of today. So first, I have some nitpicks about the plot. So I will touch on some spoilers. Go ahead and skip to the next timestamp if you'd like to skip that. I repeat, if you have not read this book, please skip now. First of all, there was so much delicious buildup in this book for the first 80% with multiple layers of tension converging. And then it all came together literally in one scene. So there was this one big climax, and to me that felt very rushed. I had hoped it would be like a little more staggered, or that there was just a little bit more confrontation, I guess, after so much buildup. I also felt like there was something missing in the reveal around the identities. I had thought there might be some connection between Piranesi and the other, or Piranesi and 16, but the ultimate explanation was just so simple and straightforward that it just felt a little less satisfying than I expected. I do feel like the epilogue made up for some of this, especially the pacing I mentioned with the reveals, because the author really let the story settle and gave a lot of strong closure. And it's not technically an epilogue, but to me it read very much like an epilogue. The strength was really, I think, in the themes that were explored, though there were a lot. And I think the one that was the most fleshed out was this theme around faith in a higher power. This was something that came up a couple of times that seemed to give Piranesi a sense of grounding and comfort in an otherwise very volatile and unsettling situation. We saw how it allowed him to stay calm and grounded when he was otherwise feeling emotional and reactive. And as somebody who doesn't personally follow a faith-based practice, I still appreciated the perspective and how it was shown in the story. Another theme I liked was how Piranesi always acted with a lot of respect towards his environment. That was like a core value, a core part of who he was. That contrasted significantly with the other, who always acted with self-interest and was trying to exploit the environment, trying to gain more power, more knowledge from the environment through whatever means necessary, even through the exploitation of other individuals, other people. And all that just, again, reinforced how much I liked Piranesi as a character. All right, so that's it for spoilers. Ultimately, what I think makes this book so special was the character of Piranesi, who is logical but not cynical, competent but always quick to extend gratitude, and overall just a really refreshing protagonist to read. The last thing I wanted to discuss was some of the allusions. There's a whole section of this page on Wikipedia, so you can definitely read further into this if you're interested. First of all, let's address the name, Piranesi. The title of the novel alludes to the 18th century Italian artist Giovanni Battista Piranesi, who produced a series of 16 prints entitled Imaginary Prisons, which depict enormous subterranean vaults with stairs and mighty machines. I'll pop a couple of those prints up on the screen so you can check it out, because I think it's interesting to see how this artwork clearly inspired the setting. There are also strong allusions to the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, and the author mentioned in an interview how she was very inspired by the short stories of Jorge Luis Borges, referring to them as very short, very precise, and very jewel-like, which again, you can really see how that influenced her prose. So I've been reflecting a lot lately on what makes a good book, what makes a great book, what makes a 5-star read for me. And I think this has kind of expanded the definition a little bit for me, particularly due to the timing, because I have been thinking also a lot about how books can be in conversation with each other, how authors talk to the works that inspired them by incorporating elements in their own writing, expanding on them, or shifting them in some way. Piranesi absolutely does that, and it has motivated me to look further and to read closer and to pick up some of the authors that inspired it. So even though this wasn't a perfectly plotted book to my taste, I appreciate how the author shared her ideas and values, how she got me as the reader to reflect on those ideas, as well as motivated me to pick up some works that I otherwise probably wouldn't have. All that to say, this was just such an engaging read. It's thought-provoking and beautifully articulated. The substance is certainly in the messaging and the themes rather than the plot itself. So if you enjoy strong atmosphere and allegory in your fiction, then I would highly recommend picking this one up. But let me know your thoughts and your opinions in the comments, or just leave me a trumpet emoji to let me know that you made it this far into the video. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you for another video soon.